Thank you for convening this important hearing on decarcerating the county jail. I have a bunch of prepared notes, but I don't want to be redundant because I feel like the people that preceded me really touched on the abuses, the trauma, the deaths, and ineptitude and in some cases incompetence of the county jail. I also know that there were some people that testified about the hard work that the staff is doing there, so we recognize everyone that preceded us. What I want to do is talk about some ways that the county, particularly the city, steps that the city can take to decarcerating the county jail. And one thing that we heard, a consistent theme throughout this hearing, is that decarcerating the county jail and public safety is compatible. They work together, they go hand in glove. Despite efforts to increase the staffing in the jails, there's 42% of those positions remain unfilled. This was according to the court's monitoring report in October of 2024. What's even more, where staffing has increased in Philadelphia's county jails, conditions have not necessarily improved. Rikers Island, one of the deadliest jails in our nation, has a staff to incarcerated person ratio of nearly 1-to-1, yet remains a dangerous and abusive environment. This isn't unprecedented. The Philadelphia Police Department has 1,500 vacancies right now, right? The county jail are running at 35 to 40% of vacancy of correctional officers, despite offering a sign-in bonus, right? We hear about NFL players like getting large signing bonuses. I believe that the signing bonuses for a new correctional officer are like 10 to 15%, right? And they still can't fill those vacancies. So this is telling us that this is a problem that's larger than just the county jail, why they can't fill these vacancies, right? It could be a problem with actual people being paid living wages in this country, right? It could be a problem with people don't want to police their own communities because they see a broken justice system every day, whether it's when they step out their front door and they're stepping over someone who's suffering substance abuse on their steps, right? Someone from their community that's not getting help, whether it's someone who has a loved one serving extreme sentencing, life without parole, something I was once serving, or if it's someone that had their loved one snatched, right? And instead of their pain being addressed, instead they're being called out to support more harsher prison sentences, more police in their communities, while not addressing the underlying conditions in our communities. So these are larger issues than just the county jail. Technical parole violations are something that are a main driver of incarceration in the county jails. And this is a problem, I believe, that starts with changing the mentality of parole officers. If you look at studies all over the country, many localities have reduced parole violations for technical violations. But I think that the place that we need to start is correcting and changing the values of parole officers and probation as well. All too often, probation is a pathway to incarceration and not a pathway off of incarceration. Probation officers do not look at themselves as social workers. As a matter of fact, they tell people on probation, my job is not to get you a job. My job is to make sure you do not violate the terms of your probation. So we need complete wraparound services and a change of mentality in Philadelphia's probation system. And that is something that the city of Philadelphia can address. It doesn't have to wait for Harrisburg to address it, but it's gonna take a commitment. So as I said, over 200 people are coming into the county jail every month on technical probation violations. Now, technical, mind you, these are violations like missing an appointment, failing to pay fines, traveling out the city. In some cases, it can involve dirty urine or misdemeanor offenses. These are burdensome conditions. They disproportionately impact low-income individuals and communities of color, and many people lack the resources to comply with the rigid conditions of supervision, which leads many of them to abscond, to roll, to get out of Dodge, because of fear of incarceration. I'll be honest with you, if you know that you're going to be violated for missing an appointment or something simple, and you're going to be violated and placed in Philadelphia's county jails, where our county jails have been the most dangerous county jails in the country since 2020, you're going to, 9 times out of 10, dudes are going to roll. I'll take my chances on the street than going in that environment. And that's a reality. This in turn fuels further entanglement with the system, getting caught up in these technical violations. According to the city's prison reports, most recent of 2024, there were more than 200 people each month incarcerated simply for technical violations. This shouldn't happen, so Philadelphia needs to take the lead from jurisdictions that have successfully reformed probation and parole. Camden does not immediately jail individuals for technical violations. Instead, they receive a letter informing them of their court date. Now, I know folks are like, we're gonna send a letter to someone that's on probation. We do that for traffic violations. We did it. You run a red light in Philadelphia, you get a letter in the mail. If you fail to pay those, you get a letter in the mail. We can do these for people on probation. We could also call them. We can also text them, specifically for the technical violations that I'm talking about, the low-level violations that, again, are not new charges. This is one way that we could stop the intake, stop the flow of people going into the county jail. And Pennsylvania also passed Act 44 that was intended to reform probation, but unfortunately it doesn't address the front-end issues of people coming into the system. And so this is what I was talking about earlier, that Philadelphia can take the lead in changing the values and the mentality of its probation officers and its probation system. Another area is releasing older and medically vulnerable individuals. I feel like this is really a no-brainer. As someone who did 28 years in prison, people who are older and medically vulnerable, they're released, when you release them, they have the lowest recidivism rates of people coming back to prison, right? Like I tell people all the time, like crime is a young man's game, right? A young woman's game too as well. So these populations in the county jail can be released. Now, some people say, okay, if people are suffering from medical conditions, what are they gonna go? Where are we gonna release them? Well, again, this is an issue that's unfortunately larger than the prison system because we have a healthcare problem in this country, right? We have a mass healthcare. We have a mass incarceration. We'll also have a mass healthcare problem in this country, right? Counsel sometimes does not have to try and figure it all out. There are resources out there in the community to help people who are suffering from medical conditions. And again, increasing and improving the city's wraparound services will aid this population. So we feel as though starting with this population, people who are suffering from medical conditions, chronic illnesses, and our seniors, they should be prioritized for release. And this is something that the city can do. They could be confined to home confinement, and probation officers or even the correctional facilities can call and check in on them. The racial justice issue, I know right now in this political climate, we don't want to talk about racial justice no more, right? It almost seems like DBI talking about how the system disproportionately impacts Black, brown, and poor people. That doesn't happen. Like that we're in some fairy tale land right now in America. But unfortunately, it happens in Philadelphia. And I appreciate that the city council and the elected officials are clear. Krasner released a report on racial justice around the system, and I was just at a city council hearing during Black History Month where the city defended its diversity policies, as well as acknowledged the historical legacy of racism, not just in Philadelphia, but in this country. When we talk about decarceration, mass incarceration, we have to talk about the racial disparities baked in our system. Black Philadelphians make up 38% of the prison population, but account for 71% of the jail population. They also endure the longest average length of incarceration. Black people are held an average of 249 days, 80 days, and 98 days longer than their white counterparts. And those studies are similar for brown folks to people as well as a Latino community, although Councilmember Lozada, I'm sure you're aware that the statistics in Latino communities are sometimes hard to sparse just because of the racial demographics of that group. 9 out of 10 people in Philadelphia jails are people of color. Studies show Black defendants are 40% more likely to be detained pre-trial than non-Black defendants. The vast majority of those in our county jails are there because we criminalize poverty, homelessness, mental illness, and substance abuse. I could tell you that I see more people that I saw inside suffering from mental health abuse living on the subway, living in the subway stations or in the regional rail stations than getting support, right? So criminalizing this group One is morally wrong, but also you're not addressing the underlying issues. You are dealing with the symptoms and not the disease, because I could assure you that the Department of Correction is sending many, many more, thousands more. The DOC releases close to 20,000 people a year. And a report found that 3/4 of them are suffering from mental health disabilities on the spectrum. So it could roll from someone who was in long-term solitary confinement and has mental health disabilities to someone that is in need of medication, right? So they're coming back to our communities, and if we don't have anything for them but handcuffs, then we're just perpetuating the trauma. And in concluding, this hearing is about decarceration. It's more importantly about the thousands of Philadelphians who remain behind bars due to outdated, unjust, and ineffective policies. We have the opportunity right now to enact meaningful reforms that will break the cycle of incarceration, end wasteful and unjust practices that keep our jails full, and move toward a justice system that prioritizes rehabilitation over punishment. We know what works. We have seen model success in other jurisdictions. One thing I want to say too is I heard everyone, and even including myself, acknowledge that we have a tough job ahead of us, acknowledge these problems, but that we don't have all the answers, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. We get to those answers by collectively working with each other, right? But there's something that we also need to acknowledge, and that it means that we need a commitment to this. We need a commitment from City Council. And I'm gonna be honest with you. We need City Council to have the same commitment and energy that it had dealing with that stadium. We need to see that. That's what we need to see from y'all. We need to see a commitment to addressing this issue. It's a serious issue. It weaves in and out of the families of every person in this city. Even people who had never been arrested. I could assure you, you have someone in your family that was impacted by this system. And more importantly, when you step out your house every day, if you move around the city of Philadelphia, you're moving around people who are impacted by this unjust system. So that's what we need. And that's something I think that we all need to agree on. If we don't have all the answers, we need to agree that we need a massive commitment from City Council. So thank you for this opportunity to testify.